What's the latest with Syracuse basketball in the transfer portal and reviewing the Syracuse basketball class of 2022 here on Locked On Syracuse?
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And on today's show, we're going to start with a transfer portal update for Syracuse basketball. What's the latest with everything going on in this ever-changing landscape of college basketball, free-for-all, free agency, and reviewing the Syracuse freshman class of 2022, which once had 6 players on it, and now it's down to 1, and that one player being Chris Bell. So why not review the Syracuse class of 2022? Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right, so a transfer portal update for you all off the top. A reminder, Syracuse basketball has 10 players under scholarship on its roster, and the NCAA allows Syracuse and allows every team in college basketball to have 13 players on its roster. So if you do a little bit of math, 13 minus 10, what does that equal? It equals 3, in case you didn't shout it out. Syracuse has 3 open scholarships left on its roster. So far, they have brought in 3 transfers, that being Eddie Lampkin, the center from Colorado, Jair Davis, the forward from Delaware, and Jaquan Carlos, the forward from Hofstra. And all 3 of them, there is a podcast a full podcast about all of those guys. Not going to go too in-depth on who Syracuse has lost so far in the transfer portal, because I did a podcast about that last week when the portal closed on May 1st. That's just players entering the portal. No one can enter anymore, but players can still obviously find new homes because there's still players in the transfer portal. So we've gotten that stuff out of the way. Now for your update. Kadary Richmond, very interesting with what's going on with him right now. Obviously, I think most people here in Syracuse would want him back. The guard currently at Seton Hall, who just a few years ago was with Syracuse as a freshman, showed a ton of potential. And then, of course, he leaves because they weren't going to give him the starting job over Joe Girard. He develops into a really quality point guard at Seton Hall, and now he's in the transfer portal as on 24/7 Sports, he's the number 1 player available. So regarding him, St. John's was the front runner, it appeared, for Kadary Richmond. But something that kind of caught my eye and why I'm kind of interested and why I think it might be possible now is that they just got Utah point guard Davon Smith. Davon Smith is a 4-star guard who on On3 is actually ranked 1 spot higher than Kadary Richmond. Do what you want with the rankings, but on On3, Kadary Richmond's, I believe, 23, and Davon Smith is 22 on the rankings. So this is a really high-quality point guard that they just brought in. So I think, like I certainly did, I was like, well, is St. John's still in on Kadary Richmond? And the answer from going online is yes. Adam Zagoria at NJ.com reported that St. John's is still very much interested in Kadary Richmond, but I don't know exactly how the Davon Smith signing impacts him. With Kadary, it's all about getting him on campus, and if you can get him on campus, you have a shot at landing him. So that's with Kadary Richmond. Next up is guard Jordan Ivy Curry from UTSA. He recently popped up Didn't do a podcast about him. I don't think I talked about him at all here on the show. But Syracuse had reached out to the 4-star transfer guard. It's not going to happen in all likelihood, though, because he just released his final 3 schools, which are Auburn, UCF, and Wake Forest. So Syracuse probably out on Jordan Ivy Curry. It seems obvious just reading the tea leaves on Syracuse's transfer portal activities that they are still targeting an impactful guard. Part of it is because, well, when they got Jaquan Carlos, they weren't just out on Dakota LaFew, but they got Jaquan Carlos as well. Their guards currently on the roster are J.J. Starling, Jaquan Carlos, who I just mentioned, Chance Westry, Elijah Moore, and Kyle Cuff. They could use one more highly productive guard right there, because right now you have Starling, and then you have a true point guard in Carlos. Westry's a wild card. Elijah Moore, he can shoot maybe at the college level. We don't know just yet. And Kyle Cuff, who can give you good defense, but not a whole lot else from Kyle Cuff. So it seems fairly obvious that Syracuse is targeting a highly prolific guard in the transfer portal. And I know what you all might be thinking. What about NIL money? Jackson, NIL money. Does Syracuse have it? Oh, we can't afford them. Da-da-da-da-da. Here's the deal, guys, with NIL money. First of all, I don't know how much or how little Syracuse has in its NIL budget. Flat out, I don't know. Okay? As far as your concerns maybe about it, I know what you guys might be thinking. Like, they couldn't afford Dakota LaFew. They couldn't afford Jordan Ivy Curry, etc. Here's the deal. I look at it from a different standpoint. Okay? Maybe more of a positive standpoint. It might not be that Syracuse doesn't have the money for those guys. It might just be that they weren't willing to give as much money as other schools, right? Kind of following along my logic here. Syracuse might have had the money to afford Dakota LaFew, the money to afford Jordan Ivy Curry. But perhaps they're aiming higher. And they don't want to spend a significant portion of the budget they still have remaining on those guys. It's like a salary cap. And yeah, every team has a different salary cap. But say, for example, it's the NHL, NFL, NBA, whatever, everyone having the same salary cap. A player becomes available in free agency. 2 teams want him. They both have the same amount to spend. One team might want him more and be willing to spend more money. So that is my comparison with Syracuse and NIL right now. It might not be that they don't have the money. It might just be that they're not willing to spend it on certain players or as much as those players might want. And also, side note with Dakota LaFew, he committed to Georgia. That's his hometown. He's from that area. Okay, he's from that area. So it could also just be a comfort thing with Dakota LaFew and why he didn't come. I don't know. The point being, I'm not worried about Syracuse getting an impactful guard in the transfer portal because it seems like they are after one right now. And probably someone who can speak a lot more about it is Mike McAllister. And I have Mike McAllister coming on the podcast for tomorrow. So stay tuned for that because we'll talk about the transfer portal and what Syracuse is still looking to do with their final 3 scholarships available. So that is your latest transfer portal update with Syracuse basketball right now. Now, coming up, it's time to review the Syracuse class of 2022. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. And right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. And Syracuse football fans, I know a lot of you guys are optimistic about this team, and myself included, but I'm not willing to say they're going to win 10 games. But if you are one of those people that think Syracuse football is going to win 10 games, at least for the first time since 2018, so 6 years, then I highly suggest you taking this bet. You can go on FanDuel right now and bet on Syracuse under first-year head coach Fran Brown to win the ACC at plus 4,500. Again, for my optimistic folks who think Syracuse is going to win 10-plus games, well, why not take a stab at Syracuse winning the ACC at plus 4,500 next season? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the streaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Welcome back, everyone, into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and at the top of the show, I gave you guys the latest transfer portal update, and we'll have on Mike McAllister to give much more in-depth analysis than I can right now. And now it's time to review the Syracuse basketball class of 2022. Now, just a refresher for you all, this class had 6 players in it, 6 freshmen. Judah Mintz, a 4-star, Justin Taylor, a 4-star, Kadary Copeland, a 4-star, Chris Bell, a 4-star, Malik Brown, a 3-star, and Peter Carey was also a 3-star in the Syracuse class of 2022. And this was a class that was borderline top 20 nationally. Borderline top 20. It was one of those where a lot of people had hope because you got a high quantity amount. You got a high quantity there. You got 6 players in one freshman class, and this is before really when the transfer portal became what it is now. And they got 4 impactful players from it. And 4 of those guys were 4-stars. Let me rephrase. Of those 6 players, 4 of those guys were 4-stars. 4 of them. Pretty good. So there was a reason why there was optimism there. And overall, there was some good and some bad that came with this class. Some good and some bad. What was the good part? It was good. Well, I said that they got 4 4-stars and they got 4 impactful players. Now, were they all 4-stars? No. Let's start with Malik Brown, who was really the success story, if you will, in this recruiting class. Last year, he averaged 10 points and 7 rebounds, shot nearly 70% from the field. He was basically just as efficient as he was in his freshman year, but saw a huge uptick in his minutes, and his numbers went up. And Malik Brown became one of the best defenders in the ACC, as well as someone who I just said can score 10 points a night. And he came in as a 3-star recruit. That is someone that's about as good as you can hope for from a 3-star guy. Eventually become an all-conference caliber player. That's very rare. Malik Brown did it. And he parlayed that success into Duke. He'll be at Duke next year. He transferred over there. I believe he was a top 50 transfer in the portal. I wish him nothing but the best. He's one of the biggest success story in the class. Next up, you had Judah Mintz, of course, who was the best player on Syracuse's roster the last 2 years. 4-star. He was the highest ranked recruit of that class. And he delivered on that. He was certainly the best of the 6. Last year, he was all ACC second team. That was an improvement from the previous year, being just an honorable mention on the conference teams. Judah Mintz, of course, then this year declares for the NBA draft. He did not get an invite to the NBA Combine, but I believe he got an invite to the G League Combine, which then means if you're one of the best players at the G League Combine, you get to go to the NBA Combine from what I'm understanding. But that's Judah Mintz, and he had a very productive career with Syracuse despite some of his faults. He wasn't a perfect basketball player, but he certainly delivered to his ranking. Kadary Copeland was a 4-star recruit. He also delivered. He is in the transfer portal right now, still has not found a new home, but he was the runner-up for the sixth man of the year last year. He should have won the award. A highly entertaining and energetic player. He had his faults too. He turned the ball over a lot. He wasn't always the greatest decision maker. But Quadir Copeland, I believe he lived up to what he was billed to be. And then, of course, there's the one holdover from the whole class. And it's silly because it's year 3 and there's only one guy left. And that's Chris Bell. And Chris Bell is one of the premier shooters in the ACC. I believe he shot nearly 50% for the second half of the year, which is unheard of numbers from the three-point range. He's a really good player. And yeah, he can't really play defense. Can't really do much else except shoot. But when you can shoot that well, you're pretty good. Almost by default because you have that elite trait. So that was some of the good from this class. They got 4 impactful players. But coming up, what were some of the downturns of the Syracuse class of 2022 and giving a final grade on the class? All right, game off. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You already talked about that. But there's just so much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you team up with friends for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get. Unique stickers you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes. Cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with. Hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique minigames like Digging for Treasure or Robot Panico Machine, and there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go, so get off the bench and go download it now, free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Welcome back, everyone, into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer. At the top of the show, I gave you guys the latest transfer portal update for Syracuse, Kadary Richmond, Jordan Ivy Curry, what's going on with those guys, Syracuse, and how they're targeting a guard in the transfer portal. And then I gave you guys some of the good that came out of Syracuse class of 2022. And now it's time to do the bad and the final grade from the Syracuse basketball class of 2022, which had 6 players in it. And now it's down to 1, just Chris Bell left. Overall, this class deserves a C+. A C+. And I gave you guys the good of it. The bad of it is pretty simple. They did not make the NCAA tournament. They didn't make the tournament. For whatever reason, this core group could not put it all together and make the tournament. And is it all their fault? No. It's not all their fault. Most of these guys were not impactful in year 1. Only really Judah Mintz was. That was about it. You can argue that Justin Taylor was the second most impactful freshman on the team a couple years ago. So a lot of them needed 1 year to develop, and a lot of them did develop next year, or this past year. A lot of them developed, but it didn't help that Justin Taylor took a dramatic step back. He went from someone who shot nearly 40% from 3 in his freshman year, and now last year he shot 30% from 3, 35% from the field. He transferred to James Madison. Peter Carey, I know he was a 3-star recruit, so you're not expecting too much from him. He ends up transferring to Siena to follow Jerry McNamara there. Syracuse has had success developing 3-stars. A couple of them recently. Joe Girard developed. Jesse Edwards, a center, developed as a 3-star. Peter Carey couldn't join that group, but that's not the end of the world. What really is that they didn't make the tournament. They were handed the keys. This class was supposed to lead the team last year. They were the guys. They did not have a good class of players coming in. They, like I said a few episodes ago, they were 148 overall in their class ranking. They only had one freshman, William Patterson. They had J.J. Starling, who was a top transfer. Yeah, they got a couple other guys, but overall, the aggregate was 148. So really, this was a team that was built on the freshmen from Syracuse class of 2022. Judah Mintz was the best player on the team. They got J.J. Starling as a sidekick. Malik Brown developed into a quality player. So did Quadir Copeland. So did Chris Bell. But overall, they could not put it all together to make the NCAA tournament. It's like, yeah, it's cool that a lot of those guys became impactful players. It is. But what's the point of the game? You play to win the game. Shout out Herm Edwards. This may be unfair. It may be unfair. But a lot of people might have thought that this was a class that could restore the national reputation of Syracuse basketball. Up until about the mid-2010s, it was one of the premier programs. It was. It was not long ago where Syracuse basketball was ranked pretty much every single year, in the tournament every single year, and not just in the tournament. They would be a high seed in the tournament, whether they won it all or not, and most of the time they did not, except for 2003. They were still one of those programs that people looked up to and thought, that's a place where I want to play basketball because it had a legendary coach in Jim Boeheim, and the team always won games. And yeah, it might be unfair that people expected maybe them to restore that, and they didn't. But at the same time, not making the NCAA tournament doesn't help. It's now 3 straight years of not making it. So I cannot give the Syracuse basketball class of 2022 a good grade. I gave them a C+ for having quality basketball players on it. But when you don't make the NCAA tournament, it causes the reputation of the school to go down as a basketball program now on 3 years, which sets up next year to really be do or die. Like if they don't make the tournament, who knows what might happen? Seriously, who knows what might not happen if this team does not make it, because it would be 4 straight years. So the class of 2022 overall just couldn't quite deliver. So that is it for reviewing it. Now, just a couple of announcements. As I alluded to earlier, or as I said earlier, not alluded to, I said it. Mike McAllister from 24/7 Sports, he will be joining us to discuss more about the transfer portal in Syracuse, what happened with Dakota LeFew. He was the one who gave the crystal ball prediction, and ultimately it did not come to be. Not saying that in an attacking light, but I just would like to know maybe what happened. So that's to look forward to on the podcast. Mike McAllister joining us tomorrow. And I have made contact with 2026 5-star football recruit Isaiah Williams. We are scheduled to tape the podcast Wednesday at 4 o'clock. So stay tuned for updates on that. That's where I have it scheduled right now to tape. It will come out on Wednesday night. Is everyone clear with that? So I am supposed to talk to Isaiah Williams, a 2026 Syracuse football 5-star recruit, on Wednesday afternoon, and then that episode would air on Wednesday night. So stay tuned for that. I will be giving announcements. I just thought I would throw that out there because I made contact. We scheduled a time. Hopefully it all works out. I hope you guys enjoyed the Damon Amendolara podcast. I thought that one went really, really well. So I would like to keep getting on as many high-profile guests as possible. Until then, thank you so much for watching this one. Thank you so much for listening. If you like this video, click that like button. And if you really liked it, subscribe to the channel. Turn on those notifications so you know right away when I'm dropping the next podcast. Of course, if there's any breaking news with Syracuse going forward, you come to me because I'll be all over it. So thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your evening, day, night, morning, whatever it is. Just have a good one.